So the New York Giants have lost 2 consecutive road games, yet they're home this weekend against the San Francisco 49ers as Jaxson Dart, their first-round pick, attempts to go 3-0 as the Giants' starting quarterback. How can they do it? Let's talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown live. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Big Blue Breakdown Live. I'm Paul Dottino as the New York Giants, coming off a really rough loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, will host San Francisco on Sunday at MetLife Stadium. Now, we all know the loss on Sunday was not pretty. It was a game that featured a lot of questionable calls on both sides of the ball, so let's not go there. The Giants were handedly beaten by a Philadelphia Eagles team that was looking for revenge. And they got it. The Giants pulverized the Eagles 2 weeks ago, and the Eagles paid them back. That's exactly what happened down at the Link, a place where the Giants have now lost 13 consecutive games, including the 2022 playoffs. But that was then, and this is now. They're going to prepare for a 5-3 San Francisco 49ers team that is significantly banged up with injuries. In fact, in all reality, and I don't know how many of you have followed what's going on with the 49ers this year, but if you've at least paid a little bit of attention, what you realize is that they have a handful of very significant players that are unavailable. Quite frankly, they are extremely lucky to be 5-3 at this point in the season. For example, Brandon Ayuk, an ACL and an MCL since October of 2024, not available. Ben Bartch, good offensive lineman, ankle, not available. Nick Bosa, ACL. After the first couple of weeks of the season, he's done for the year. Fred Warner, outstanding linebacker, broken ankle. He's done for the year. So you understand that this is a team that has lost some very significant players. And somehow, I still don't know how, they are 5-3. But, hey, that's what they are. They've got absolutely no pass rush to speak of. And, folks, I just want to give you a couple of numbers here. Before we go any further, I'm going to get to your chats in just a bit. Not only are they second to last with only 9 quarterback sacks this season, but as we all know, and I've talked about this many times on this show, more often even on the Big Blue Kickoff Live program, that quarterback pressure is the result of hurries, quarterback hits, and quarterback sacks. Sacks only makes up 1/3 of the pressure number. Well, between hurries, knockdowns, and sacks, the San Francisco 49ers have a combined score of 31, which is dead last in the National Football League. By comparison, the Giants have a pressure score of 62, double the San Francisco 49ers. The Giants rank 12th amongst NFL defenses in pressure score. The Niners are dead last at 32. So this is another one of those games on paper where, and we'll talk about the injuries in just a bit because the injury report came out this afternoon for the Giants after their first practice of the week, and it's a lengthy one. They've got a nasty one too, okay? But there is absolutely no question that the Giants should have a realistic chance of beating this team. Then again, They have thrown away 3 different games so far this year between the Dallas game, the New Orleans game, and the Denver game, which is why they sit at 2-6 right now instead of at potentially 5-3. You see, what the Niners haven't done is that they haven't given games away. They have not been in a very generous mood. And so that makes a very big difference. So we look at this number here, pass rush number, and we say, okay, should be a big edge for the Giants in terms of getting after the quarterback. Whatever. How about this number? The San Francisco 49ers have had 25 negative rushing plays this year, or 12% of their running plays have gone for negative yardage. That is the 4th highest percentage in the NFL. So let's see. They don't have much of a pass rush, and they have an awful lot of trouble consistently and effectively running the football, even though McCaffrey is in the backfield. He does have nearly 500 yards on the season. He had that one huge game against Atlanta, was over 120 yards. But let's face it, he's averaging 3.5 yards a carry. He's only got a long of 15. And the negative run number that's been charged to this offense, again, 4th highest. So they've been getting trapped behind the line an awful lot. So a team that can't rush the passer and that has an awful lot of trouble running the football, it seems to me they should be having a difficult time winning football games. But yet somehow, even though they've got, I wanted to check it, the 26th ranked offense in terms of scoring at only 20 points a game. Giants, by the way, are averaging 22 points a game, which is 23rd ranked. So the Giants are scoring more points per game this year than the San Francisco 49ers. These are very fundamental, obvious numbers that should tilt the scales in the Giants' direction. But will it happen? Who knows? Not the way this team has found ways to do the impossible and give games away. All right. Those are just a couple of things I wanted to get out of the way right away. Oh, and by the way, if you just wanted a comparison on running the football, Giants have 15 negative runs. 6.5% of their runs have been negative. So this much maligned offensive line, they have the 7th lowest negative run percentage in the NFL. So for all the heat that this offensive line has taken, they are actually much more functional than most people would have you admit. All right. I wanted to get that stuff out of the way right up top before we dive into some injuries. And let me get to your chats right over here on the side of the screen, because there's a lot of people chiming in already. And I love that, because I love to talk to people. I wish more of you would give me phone calls and video calls, but we'll just deal with the chats for now. Yeah, I know. The O-line. I know. I was already peeking ahead. Someone saying not the same old O-line. No, it's not. And that's the shame of it. All this talent on this team, and they keep being generous enough to give games away. Even the offensive line is better. And the Giants are still 2-6. All right, let's see. Armand Duda. I'm not late this week. Well, Armand, that's okay. We don't run by Tom Coughlin rules here. You don't have to be 5 minutes early. Heck, you don't even have to be on time. We're going to be here for at least an hour tonight. Whether or not I go past 9 o'clock Eastern time all depends on you guys, as it always does, because I'm here for you. That's for sure. So don't worry about it. Thanks for being here. Ali Koenig says the Hospital Bowl. Yes, you could indeed call it that if you'd like. Again, I'll go through the list of injuries in just a bit, although I have not gotten, I'll have to go back and look again before the show. I did not get an opportunity as I was just finishing up a plate of pasta before we started. After all, I needed something to put me in a good mood. I do need to go look and see if San Francisco has sent over their updated injury report. The Giants' injury report is pretty lengthy. We'll get to that in just a bit. Armand Duda says, respect to Philadelphia for the respect they showed Skattebo. Folks, for those of you who did not watch the MSG television postgame show after the Giants' loss in Philadelphia on Sunday, I made sure to address that particular situation during the MSG show. And I felt it was necessary because, much like most people who have a very poor opinion of the general Eagles fan base, the fact remains that when Skattebo was carted off the field in Philly, and by the way, did wave to the crowd as he was taken off, he got a standing ovation from the fans at the link. I was shocked, surprised, but it also made me feel pretty good that, you know what? There is some goodness still left, and those fans understood, no matter how much their hatred is for the opponent, they were at least cognizant of the fact that Cam Skattebo is the kind of guy that everybody would want on their team. He's a really great guy. I think everybody knows that if you've seen any interviews that he's done. He's a fun guy. He's a great guy. He's a high-energy guy. Never mean-spirited in any way. Did not ever instigate, to my knowledge, since he's been with the Giants, in any trash talk. I don't believe he did at Arizona State, but I don't know that for a fact. And the Eagles fans decided that it was the right thing to do. And they did give him a standing ovation. And I thought that was a real thumbs-up action by those folks at the link. So yes, I'm glad, Armand, that you brought that up. I thought it was significant enough to bring up on the MSG post-game live television show. I'm not at all embarrassed to say that I was surprised, but it certainly needed to be mentioned. Grail 1972. Interesting. 1972 is his is the date that he chose as part of his name, and yet the picture of the helmet that he has is the 1979 Giants helmet that Phil Simms wore as a rookie. Now, how do you know that? Well, a couple of reasons. You got the word Giants on the side, which of course is something the Giants started in 1976 when they first moved into their brand new Giants stadium. But you see the red stripe down the center of the helmet? In 1979, that was the last year that the Giants had the white stripe on each side of the red stripe down the center of the helmet. I don't believe, if memory serves correct, I believe they dispatched the white stripe in 1980. I know they had it in 79 for sure, because Simms had that helmet as a rookie. Do you think we make any more moves at the trade deadline? So says Grail 1972. I don't think so. Anything is possible, of course, but I think the Giants will probably stand pat. That's just a hunch. I don't think they're interested in getting rid of any draft capital for the future because they're going to need it. I thought that if the Giants had beaten Denver, they'd have been more likely to make a deal because at that point, it would have made them 3-4. Instead, they were 2-5 going into Philly, and now they're 2-6 coming out of Philly. So I don't think there's much sense in trading future draft capital for this season's team when you are really trying to dig yourself out of a very deep ditch. Allie says, I think the key differentiator in the Niners game will be coaching. Well, I don't think that there's anybody who would dispute the fact that Kyle Shanahan is one of the better coaches in the NFL. And quite honestly, I don't know how many times during the course of their schedule they would be at a coaching deficit. You know, I always felt when the Giants had Bill Parcells on the sidelines and Tom Coughlin on the sidelines, I always felt that the Giants would at least be even, if not on most weeks, on the plus side of the coaching ledger. I felt that strongly about those staffs. And indeed, it was something that always boosted your confidence going into a game. Like, okay, we at least know that check mark, at the very least, right? At the very least, is going to be even. You certainly won't be behind. But Kyle Shanahan is the type of guy who's going to get the check mark against almost any coach in the National Football League today. So, Allie, I would not necessarily even try to put up any resistance against your comment there. Aiden M. Fink says, good evening, Paul. Let's not get eaten by the evil turf monster on Sunday. Oh, my. I think it does bear mentioning that last week in Philadelphia, you know, that's a hybrid turf that's got some artificial turf weaved into the natural grass. The injury to Cam Skattebo when he suffered the dislocated ankle, by the way, he did have his surgery on Monday, and he was at the facility today, was in a team meeting, according to head coach Brian Daboll. Everybody was glad to see him. He was in great spirits, and the Giants are going to begin moving forward, obviously, with his healing process and rehab as they move down the road and look toward next season for him. I will tell you, I don't think that was the turf monster in Philadelphia. They got him. You know, Zach Baun, the Eagles linebacker, was trying to break up a pass, hit him from behind, and when he went down, Baun landed on the backside of Skattebo's right foot, and his ankle got caught, and his foot turned the wrong way and dislocated his ankle. That was not a pure artificial turf field. So, you know, once again, every time somebody gets hurt, there's always an argument. Was it the natural grass? Was it the artificial surface? Look, it's a tough game, folks. It's going to happen. These types of things will occur. I remember when Dak Prescott was playing the Giants down in Dallas, and he suffered not only a dislocated ankle, but there was a lot of ligament damage in there. And if you remember that play, his ankle was his foot was totally pointed in the wrong direction, just like Skattebo. So Prescott has come back and he's doing what he does and he's healed. So not that they're exactly the same. I don't know that because obviously I'm not a doctor and I don't have access to medical records. But when I saw Skattebo's foot, I thought about Prescott right away and the fact that the foot was going in the wrong direction. And so it doesn't sound as though, based on the injury information that the Giants gave us, dislocated ankle, well, there was more to that with Dak Prescott. So, and he came out of it okay. So I'm gonna say, with all due respect, I don't know the details, that Skattebo is going to come out okay as well. I know this. He will attack rehab like he attacks everything else with an awful lot of vigor. That's for sure. And by the way, Giants head coach Brian Daboll also announcing today that on Tuesday, Malik Neighbors underwent surgery on his leg, his torn ACL. And so he is expected back to the Giants facility either tomorrow or the following day as he reports back to the team. So that's where we're at with those two horrible injuries. Armand Duda says, oh, San Francisco is vulnerable. Well, there's no question that they're vulnerable. I already gave you some very significant indicators as to why. There's absolutely no doubt about that. They are vulnerable. Isaac Moore, 1248, says, bad illegal tackle. Oh, Armand, there were specific factors, specific elements of a hip drop tackle that apply to that specific penalty that the NFL, put extra emphasis on beginning last season. And one of them is that when you come up to the player, you actually twist him and torque him sideways as you bring him down. That's one of the elements that was not there. You have to have all of the elements to quantify it as a hip drop tackle. The twisting and the torquing was not evident on that play. So I don't believe that there will be any repercussions for that being termed as a hip drop tackle. I do understand that it looked a lot like one, but without meeting all of the conditions, I suspect it won't be counted as such, but I just don't know. That's for the league to decide if they want to slap a fine on Zach Baun. That's not for me to decide. But as I understand the rule and the specific things that have to be present, I think there's one key element for sure that was not present on that particular play. I hope I've explained that to you simply enough. MB Goblin. Perfect for a Halloween show, right? P-Dot, how much concern do you have with our cornerback spot going into this game? Sounds like Debo might be a game-time decision. Flott likely out. Cordell Flott is in concussion protocol. You saw the clicking of the helmets in Philadelphia. Totally an accident. Just a matter of circumstance. He's trying to punch the ball out. And teammate's helmet clicks. And okay, so now he goes into the protocol. He seems to be doing fairly well. But at the same time, because he was in the locker room today, changing clothes and getting dressed. We're not allowed to talk to injured players as a rule. The media is not supposed to talk to injured players. But if we see a player either out on the field with the trainers or in the locker room getting dressed, we can report that we have seen him, and we can tell you what he did or what he appeared to be doing and how he appeared to be moving. I've seen guys stay in the building, walk through the locker room with dark sunglasses on and walk rather slowly. Well, then they are very early in the concussion protocol and they're not feeling very well. There are other times you don't see a guy at all who's in the protocol, and that definitely means they're not doing so well. But when you see a guy in concussion protocol, but he is at his locker getting changed and he appears to be moving fluidly as if there's nothing wrong, he's doing better than most. He must be further along in terms of the issue. That is strictly an amateur eyewitness account. For example, if they are out in the concussion protocol and out watching from the sidelines, watching practice, well, you guys know part of concussions is sensitivity to light, as well as dizziness and nausea and stuff of that nature. Well, if a player is in concussion protocol but on the sidelines, standing with the trainers watching practice, and he's not wearing sunglasses, well, then chances are he's moving along better and he's doing better. So those are the kinds of things you look for when you hear that a gentleman is in concussion protocol. You look for those kinds of signs because you can only go by what the team says, and the team will say he's in the protocol. That's the only information you get. And then you're not allowed to talk to the player to ask him. So you have to go by what you see. That's where it stands with Flott. I don't know by tomorrow, Thursday's practice, if he'll be cleared to go outside with his teammates, or if he'll even be, allowed to do some running around and jogging. I don't know the answer to that, because that's another thing you can look for. If a guy's in concussion protocol and then on the backfield, the trainers are with him and he's doing wind sprints, that's a very good sign that he's almost coming out of it. So we're going to have to see how Flott progresses. But I think at the moment he's in the protocol. I did not see him doing jogging or wind sprints or anything of that nature. So I don't think he's ultra close, but I do think he's doing fairly well. That is an amateur's adjective, okay? Again, I've explained myself, how I've come to that conclusion, and hopefully that gives you somewhat of an indication as to what we look for as media when this situation occurs. As far as Paulson Adebo, yeah, didn't see any sign of him today during the media portion of practice. As we know, he's got that injured knee. So I would say it's highly unlikely he's going to be available. So you're looking probably at Tay Banks again, opposite, I guess, with no Adebo, you're looking at Banks. And I think, you know what, Green is banged up too. I mean, let's just say this, okay? Let's just say this. Giants got themselves a little bit of a pickle there. I'm not going to lie to you, MB Goblin. They just claimed a corner off of waivers from the Cleveland Browns yesterday. Okay? And I haven't done any work on him. Corey Black played 30 snaps against Philadelphia. I checked his number. And the thing about Corey Black, Giants draft choice from this year, you remember they drafted him 7th round. They loved him as a special teams player, thought he had potential at corner, gets cut in the final cut. They wanted to move him to the practice squad. The Jets stole him, put him on their 53. He made 2 appearances on special teams, did not play any defensive snaps. Went to the practice squad. The Giants, just last week, stole him back off the Jets practice squad and put him on their 53. And he played 30 snaps, making his defensive debut in the pros with 30 snaps. I thought, by the way, that Dotson could have been called for pass interference on the bomb that wound up going for a touchdown against Black. A judgment call. That's what I would have judged, but so be it. So Corey Black certainly would be in line, potentially, as a corner who could play in this game. Jarek Bernard-Converse is the other corner from Cleveland who was claimed off of waivers. He just got here. Black hasn't been here much longer, but at least he was here during training camp. So we'll see if they decide to go there. You're right, Goblin. I don't really know. I don't really know exactly how the Giants are going to play it at corner this year. In fact, what I should do now, probably before I get to any more of your chats, I probably should get to the injury report, although you guys obviously have the ability to go see it on Giants.com if you wanted to look at it. But I think maybe it is a little bit relevant that we mention very quickly, and I'm just going to go through this very, very quickly. The Giants injury report as it stands right now. All right. Did not practice. Adebo with a knee, Bellinger with a neck. I don't think Bellinger's is very serious, but who knows. Illuminor with a pec. Did not work again. I would suspect we would probably see him in the game. Flott's in the protocol. Chauncey Golston is nursing a neck injury again. I don't know what to think. I suspect maybe we won't see him. Art Green with a hamstring did not practice today. Jalen Hyatt went to the dentist, had a tooth issue, did not practice. And Greg Van Roten was given a load management day off as a veteran. Limited practices for Bo Collins with a quad. Javon Holland with that knee injury. Remember, he missed last week's game. So it's good that he got some snaps in today. Chris Manhertz was sick. He was limited. And the other corner that the Giants have on the roster, well, not quite on the roster yet. They activated the practice window for Rico Payton, who had a groin injury. They activated him for practice, and he had a full practice today. So even Rico Payton might wind up being one of the corners who gets out there on Sunday against San Francisco. Very briefly, The Niner injury report, Ben Barch, the guard, ankle, limited practice today. Jake Brendel, hamstring, did not work with a hammy again. He is their starting center. They are significantly banged up. Spencer Buford, a tackle, was in full practice with a bad knee. Alfred Collins, you guys remember, real big moose of a man out of the University of Texas, not working with a sore shoulder. Let's see, who else didn't work today? Yatir Gross-Matos, a knee and a hamstring injury, former Penn State pass rusher. Bryce Huff, pass rusher, formerly of the Jets, hamstring, did not work today. Somehow, John Jennings was able to work full practice despite ankle, rib, and shoulder injuries. I have no response to that, nor do I care to dig in any further. Somehow he was able to have a full practice. George Kittle, he's been back now already for a week with an oblique, full practice. Christian McCaffrey was given a load management day off. Ricky Pearsall got a sore knee. He did not practice. That would be another significant loss for them. Brock Purdy was limited on his toe injury. Mac Jones has done a very adequate job. Okay? Is Purdy going to make it back for Sunday? That remains to be seen. Brian Dable today said, you study Kyle Shanahan's offense, and then you worry about some of the tweaks between the two quarterbacks. But the basis of your study is about Shanahan's offense because it's a real good one. Trent Williams, outstanding left tackle, was given load management day off. D. Winters, starting linebacker, did not work today with a knee. So, I mean, this team is badly banged up. Okiwa Inunu, I think that's what his name is. I'll be frank with you folks. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. I don't do 49ers games. But Sam, let's call him Sam OK. He's one of their defensive ends. He also, who gets a lot of playing time, ankle injury, did not practice today. So that's what we're looking at. It's a mash unit. Much worse than the Giants. It is a mash unit. And they're coming in here, gimping on one leg, but somehow, they have a winning record. So let's see what happens with the Giants when San Fran actually arrives and gets on the field Sunday. Aiden Fink says, what's your opinion on having AI to officiate in the NFL in the future like MLB is going to do with the automatic balls and strike system? Too many missed calls. Oh, Aiden, how do you program AI to legislate pass interference? How? We know there's a certain amount of hand fighting that is allowed. How do you program AI to determine that? I just don't know. I'm not a fan of it. And I think the way the pass interference penalty was allowed to be reviewable did not go well at all. So I don't know that that's the answer. It should be, to be honest with you, it should be. Pass interference should be reviewable if they could do it correctly. But in the year that they tried to experiment with it a few years ago, it was an absolute, complete, total disaster. It was like taking a jar of grandma's sauce and turning it upside down on the kitchen table and making a mess all over the floor. That's what it was like. And as much as I would like to see replay allowed for pass interference, after the way they implemented it during that one experimental season, I never want to see that again unless they can put enough guidelines in it to make it correct, because it was awful. It took too long, although I'm always an advocate for getting the call right no matter how long it takes. But they were taking a ridiculous amount of time doing it, and then many times they still got it wrong. It was dreadful. So Aiden, my answer is no. I don't want to see AI officiate the game. What I do advocate is the sky official, which is what the CFL does up in Canada, north of the border. They've got an official in the press box who, if he sees something that is incredibly egregious, he can buzz down and say, hey, that was a penalty. He's an extra pair of eyes, looking at it from overhead with a different perspective. I don't mind having a sky official with the opportunity to at least consult with the officials on the field and say, we think we got something here. I mean, the offensive pass interference called against Darius Slayton on the late second half touchdown catch from Jaxson Dart that took the score off the board. You saw the Eagles defensive back, if you were watching, and you didn't even need to wait for the replay, you saw the Eagles defensive back not only interfere with Slayton during the hand fighting, which was incidental, but you also saw a tugging of Slayton's jersey. And I've never seen any definition of offensive pass interference that includes the defender pulling on the wide receiver's jersey. I'd love to know which NFL penalty dictionary says that that is offensive pass interference. I don't think it exists. It wasn't up here, it was actually in the back, but I wanted to be demonstrative with my video. I really wish you hadn't asked me about the officials, Aiden, because last Sunday's game was very, very, very rough to watch. And I'm sure that as bad as Giants fans felt about that game, the people who grade the NFL officials probably felt even worse. Armand Duda says, I'm more concerned about us letting them run the ball. Well, I just told you about the Niners rushing attack. In fact, I'll give you another number, my man. The San Francisco 49ers are averaging just under 90 yards per game rushing. That is 30th in the National Football League. They are averaging 3.4 yards per carry. That ranks dead last in the NFL, as in 32nd. I almost don't even want to tell you any of these facts, because all of these facts tell you what should happen in the game. But we all know what should happen does not always happen. J-Fed 49-42. San Francisco is 5-3 after all these injuries because of competent coaching schemes. Coaching matters. Again, we have thrown high respect to Kyle Shanahan, Robert Saleh, remember the DC over there, and then went to the Jets, failed as a head coach, but is back over there being the DC again. High respect for Saleh as a defensive coordinator. So you've got Kyle Shanahan, and you've got Robert Saleh, and you've got Clay Kubiak as the offensive coordinator, and you may recall Brent Boyer, former Jets special teams demon, is the special teams coordinator for the 49ers. So in most games, San Francisco is going to have a check plus on the coaching line as you compare the two teams. That's just the way it is. Ali says, our pass rush is certainly the key to our game against the Niners offensive line as it stands now. That is one edge the Giants should have. And by the way, I don't know if you got to watch the Philadelphia game last weekend, Ali, but wow, the mugging that Abdul Carter had to endure in that game. At one point, I thought they were going to twist and rip his head off. at one point. Somehow his head stayed attached to his body during the course of the game, and I'm glad it did. I saw him today. He was still in one piece, still had a neck, and the head was still there, attached above the shoulders. I'm surprised it was, because even though it didn't fall off or get ripped off during the game, I thought it might have been weakened enough that it might fall off after the game, but it did not. So Abdul Carter still has a head. Armand Duda, AI can't do all the officiating. Correct. James O'Keefe, NY2TC, says, hello. Is there any chance of Holland and Adebo playing this week? Well, Holland was limited today, so I suspect there's a much better shot of him getting in Sunday's game. Paulson Adebo, I'd say at the moment, it does not look good. Queensboro Brother says, hello, Paul. I'm hoping to observe my Giants climb out of this funk of a losing streak, fingers and toes crossed. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what else I can tell you, man. I'm with you. I get it. I get it. If it's any consolation to you, and I know it's not, it shouldn't be, because you have your team and you can't worry about other teams. But look at the Baltimore Ravens, who are 2-5. And I know Lamar Jackson's coming back, but their season is in serious, serious trouble. The Miami Dolphins fully expected, I never did, but they fully expected that they'd be competing for a playoff spot. And they're 2-6, just like the Giants are. So I don't know what to tell you. I mean, even Cincinnati and Washington, right? They got Joe Burrow, they got Jaden Daniels. People were really high on both of those teams. Bengals were supposed to possibly be a Super Bowl contender. And, you know, I've heard enough about Washington from their fans. Oh, 12 wins last year. Oh. Both of those teams are 3-5. I mean, this is the NFL. You got to earn it every week. And you can't just outplay your team, your opponent, for most of the game. You got to earn it every week by playing a full 60 minutes and not giving games away. That's how you get credit for wins on the NFL standings, which, by the way, are the only things that matters when the NFL hands out playoff spots. No, Queensboro Brother, that had nothing to do with you. I'm just a little frustrated. MB Goblin, I think the Niners get Purdy back this week, which could change their offense pretty substantially. Yeah, again, limited at practice today on a toe. They've been saying that Purdy is on the way to recovery and that he should be back soon. Mac Jones hasn't exactly ruined their chances to be a winning team. They are 5-3, you know. Aiden Fink, Shanahan's a great coach. That's why they're winning games. We've already addressed Kyle Shanahan's coaching prowess at least twice during this program. Ali Koning is back again, says, to be realistic, the Giants should be able to beat the Niners as they are now. But the X factor is the Niners find their way and the Giants don't seem to. So this is why I say coaching matters. Ali, I would add one other item, though. Jaxson Dart is 2-0 as a starting quarterback at home. He has helped the Giants upset a pretty good Chargers team and helped them absolutely bludgeon a Philadelphia Eagles team that just paid the Giants back. So they had their two best games of the season at home with Dart as a starter, and they are 2-0 under those circumstances. I do think that Dart does energize the stadium. You'll see fewer no-shows over the last two games at home if you've watched the video. Skattebo was also a big part of that, so it absolutely hurts to lose Skattebo. There's no question about that. I do think, though, that it allows Tyrone Tracy to once again be the featured back like he was last year when he ran for about 900 yards as a rookie, even though he missed the first month or so of the season. Tyrone Tracy's a really good back, and he's explosive. Now, he's not the bulldozer that Skattebo is, but he's got more long speed and could break a long one for a score. I don't know if you saw the Denver Broncos game, but there was a huge hole. Boom, he was gone for a touchdown. So the fact that they're home again, Jaxson Dart is still the quarterback. He is 2-0 at home as the Giants starter. It has seemed to energize the Giants home crowd. It has given them some life. It has allowed the Giants to somewhat start nudging forward again with a home field advantage. I think that is a component that should not be overlooked, because if you look at the Giants and you look at their 3 charity cases, and I know because you're going to tell me, well, Dart was the quarterback when they gave away charity to New Orleans. Dart was the quarterback when they gave away charity to Denver. Well, both of those games were road games. And even the other charity case with the Dallas Cowboys, it was a road game when Russell Wilson was quarterback. So I do think there's something to Jaxson Dart sparking this team and being in front of his home fans and this stadium, at least trying to give the Giants some sense of a home field advantage. We'll see if that does actually factor into this game somehow. Armand Duda, and this was the comment that I referred to earlier in the program, this is not the same old line. No, it's not. They have become functional. Let me give you a little proof of that. We'll give you some more evidence. We gave you the rushing number before. Giants, some more numbers. 118 yards per game rushing the football. That is good enough for 15th in the NFL. Middle of the pack. We told you running the ball, here's where they're a little bit underneath sea level. 4.0 yards a carry, which is 23rd. Used to be the case where if you average 4 yards a carry or better, you were happy with that. Well, right now, 4 yards a carry only puts the Giants at 23, but puts them a lot higher than San Francisco. Bad news, Giants have given up 25 sacks. Now, 25 sacks puts them down in the bottom 6 of the NFL. They have given up too many sacks. However, this is where you have to really study the tape and understand a lot more about pro football than just looking at the stats, right? People who just look at numbers purely without context, it can be a little misleading. That's why I gave you some numbers that I think don't necessarily involve context, and they are somewhat indicative. But how about this for a sack number, okay? Jaxson Dart has been sacked 17 times so far this season, right? Well, according to my film study, because I do study the tape after every game, and I do charge sacks, even though it's unofficial, Dart's been sacked 17 times. 8 of them I charged to Dart himself, not to their offensive line. Now you say, well, how can that be? Well, against the Chargers, he stepped up into a sack, which was unnecessary. He also tripped and fell, which gave the Chargers a freebie sack. That's 2 right there. Against New Orleans, he dropped the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Ran into pressure, dropped the ball. That got counted as a sack. That's not on the offensive line. So that's 3. He stepped up into the traffic and got sacked in the home game against Philadelphia. Was not necessary. That's 4. Against Denver, he held the ball too long and allowed a naked rusher to come off the edge. That's 5. Also against Denver, he held the ball and rolled right into the sack. Ran right into it. Held the ball too long. That's 6. And then against Philadelphia on Sunday, he ran into Bourne behind the line. That's 7. And Carter, Jalen Carter, got him when he held the ball too long and had plenty of time to get rid of it. That is 8. So I have charged 8 sacks to Jaxson Dart. Even though the Giants on the season have given up 25, I charged 8 to Dart. I also, by the way, charged 1 to Russell Wilson when the ball slipped out of his hand and it was ruled a fumble against Dallas. And the Giants recovered, and that was ruled by technicality. Statistically, it has to go down as a sack. So that's 9 total sacks in my film study that was not against the Giants' offensive line, and they have given up 25 on the season. So that's how sometimes that can be a very deceiving statistic, and you need to have context to truly understand the number. So, yes, are the Giants giving up too many sacks? No question. 25 is a big number. But it's not a serious indictment on the offensive line. Because, as I just explained to you, 1/3 of those sacks were not on them. I hope I've given you some insight into that, and maybe you'll be a little more discerning the next time you see a sack given up by a Giants quarterback. Now, again, Dart's a rookie. That's going to happen to rookie quarterbacks. Rookie quarterbacks, by their nature, usually do play themselves into more sacks than veteran quarterbacks because they don't check it down as quickly as they could, or they don't throw the ball away out into the bench or all over the sideline for a quick incompletion as often as they should. That's just the very nature of a rookie quarterback. So at least now, if someone says to me or says to you, those of you who were tuned into the program tonight, well, how come the Giants have 25 sacks? That's an awful lot. The offensive line still isn't any better. Well, now you can tell them, no, actually the offensive line has been very functional. There were other reasons why that number is what it is. Armand Duda says, oh, we can do something against these guys. I'm sure he's talking about the 49ers. James O'Keefe says, Paul, if you were GM, would you make a trade for a wide receiver? Absolutely not. Nope. Would not do it. Had the Giants beaten the Broncos and been at least 3-4 at that time, I would have certainly given it a lot more consideration. But now at 2-6, I see no point in doing it. And by the way, okay, you've got little Jordan Humphrey, who did get activated a few weeks ago and had a really nice game. I've got no problem playing him some more. But again, you're going to have to use activations. And I think, let me just check here for a second. I think he might be out of activations. I would have to look at that. But even if he's not, you could always, if you really wanted another receiver on the roster, you could always put him on the 53. It would come at the expense of somebody else. That's true. Let me see here. Little Jordan Humphrey, yes. On the 25th, that's right, last week. So I do believe, let me just double check this. See, I've got all my records everywhere. Some of them are in the computer. Some of them are handwritten on paper because you can't take the pen and paper out of the veteran. That was Jordan Humphrey's 3rd activation in Philadelphia. Okay, so if you want little Jordan Humphrey back, you are going to have to sign him to the 53. You also have Dylan Cambry on the practice squad. And by the way, you have Amir Smith-Marset on the practice squad. Another quality receiver. He was terrific on kick returns last year, on kickoff returns. And by the way, had a good training camp as a wide receiver. They don't seem anxious to bring him up, but he's there. And of course, you guys know that Ray McCloud, who had 160 catch season last year for Atlanta, is also on the practice squad right now. So, I mean, what are you going to do? What kind of wide receiver are you going to find that's available that you could trade for right now? That's not going to cost you significant trade capital if he's any good, which is only going to hurt your team in 2026. Why would you do that? So no, the answer is no. I think the Giants have some options at wide receiver in the building if they're not happy with what they have. Okay, let's keep moving on. We got some more chats here. Again, folks, if you'd like to participate over the phone call, you see there's that QR code up there. That's what they call it, right? The QR code. I call it the ink blotch. It's up there in the right-hand corner. You can scan that with your phone. That'll help get you in. You could also go right to the bottom of the screen. You see this right down here at the bottom of the screen? StreamYard. There's a link there you could use that way, and you could do an audio call or a video call if you so choose. Isaac Moore says, Dex responded to Carl's, that's Dexter Lawrence, responded to Carl Banks' remarks. Can you talk about what you know or see around the team? Well, let's put it this way. I will not speak for a broadcast teammate. I will say this. I myself have said that Dexter Lawrence has not played up to Dexter Lawrence standards. I don't hide from that. Look at the production line. Does he still get double teamed a ton? Yes, he does. Assistant coach, defensive line coach Andre Patterson has talked about this practically every week, about how much attention is paid to him. Now, we know that it was in late November last year, Dexter Lawrence suffered a dislocated left elbow. Okay? I remember talking to an orthopedist outside the building who told me that could easily take a year before he fully regains every facet of his strength, mobility, and everything in the elbow. Well, we're at 11 months right now. Dexter Lawrence himself says the elbow is not a problem, and I appreciate that. Why would any player put out an excuse? Because that makes him look weak. It also gives the opposition a target to attack. Players are very, very rarely going to tell you that they are being hampered by any sort of injury. That's just not what professional NFL football players do. So whether or not he does have some weakness in that arm still or not, I don't know the answer to that. But he certainly might. He's wearing the brace. I mean, if you watch him, he's wearing a huge brace on that left arm still. That's number one. And he wears it at practice also, by the way. So that would be the first thing that I would say. The second thing I would say is, because of his rehab process during the offseason, he did not do as much as he would have usually done in terms of working. When he got to spring drills, and then he got to training camp, and he got to the preseason, the Giants executed a ramp-up with him. Load management. He did not practice a ton every day because of load management. This was a decision made by the trainers and by the team. He also did not play in any of the preseason games. And if you are aware of this program or the Big Blue Kickoff Live program, you know that I was very adamant when I said it would not surprise me if Dexter Lawrence got off to a very slow start during the regular season, and that the first 4 weeks of the regular season will probably be much like preseason games for him. And it's going to take him quite a while to ramp up and get back to being the player that we know. Well, I think it's fair to say that it seems to have taken longer than that. But that also is what happens when your team is on the down and you're losing. That's just the way it goes. When a team is doing poorly, it's easy to start sifting through the weeds and start picking out individual players and saying, well, they're not doing as much as they should. I just think the only obvious answer here is that Dexter Lawrence played at an all NFL level, an all Pro Bowl level the last couple of years. And he was very impactful. No matter how many people were thrown at him, he was impactful. Each and every week, you would see a hit, a pressure, a sack, a tackle for a loss. He was ferocious, and he often embarrassed other teams' centers, guards, running backs, whoever tried to block him. We have not seen that level of play this year from him. That's not to say he is playing poorly. At least in my opinion, I think he's playing okay. I don't think he's done a bad job. But when you are Dexter Lawrence and you have set a standard that is as high as the moon in the sky, well, it's going to be really, really rough until you get up to that standard again. And it's going to show, because when you are a dominant all-pro superstar, people will expect that type of play each and every week. And what we're seeing is just, right now, he's a good player. But he's not playing like an all-pro superstar who is going to have impactful plays every single weekend. Isaac Moore, that is as honest and as complete an answer I can give you. I hope that makes some sense. Armand Duda, the 1990 coaching staff was monumental. That is very true. Both staffs, the Parcells staff and the Coughlin staff, were terrific. But of course, the Parcells staffs wound up turning into a coaching tree with many branches. Armand Duda, Dexter is great, but he's no Carl Banks. Calling him delusional didn't sit well with me. Carl just called it like it is. Armand Duda also say, my heart stopped when you listen to Hyde on the injury report, but thankfully you followed with went to the dentist. That is what happened. That's why I think it's important sometimes. You know, people are so quick when they, and I understand social media is the go-to for anybody who wants to get injury reports on players, because they know that there are media people out at practice, and the first thing they're going to do when they get out to practice is get out their phones and they're going to type out guys who they don't see. Well, the problem with that is the guys who you don't see, unless the team specifies, and they don't have to specify before practice. Sometimes they'll just do it after practice. They won't, if they don't specify before practice why a guy is not out there during the open portion when the media can see, you'll have guys typing out, then so-and-so is not there. And now the fans go into a panic because they say, oh, so-and-so missed practice. Oh, what happened? He must be hurt. And then it turns out, in Jalen Hyatt's case today, he went to the dentist. Okay? Sometimes it turns out the guy was ill and he had the flu. He was sick. Sometimes, as we've seen before with this team, the guy's wife is having a baby. So he's away because of childbirth. Then you also have a situation where a guy will be away from the team because his family is having a personal issue that requires significant attention. But see, most times when a player is not out on the practice field, most of the time, you don't get a reason for it until after practice is over, when the team says, okay, we've had our full practice. These are the guys who did not work. these are the guys who were limited, and these are the guys who, who were injured but full. That's when the injury report by the league is required to come out with those designations. So the team doesn't have to tell you anything before practice or during practice. An NFL team only has to give that officially sanctioned injury report after practice is over. But because of social media, as soon as that guy's name hits the Twitter, he didn't practice, it immediately causes a panic. And yet I just gave you 5 reasons, all legitimate, why a guy would not be at practice, and none of them have to do with him being hurt or him being AWOL, skipping out because of a contract dispute, or not showing up because he got into trouble. No. Has nothing to do with any of that. And of course, most people will think it's because of an injury. They'll just assume out of thin air it's an injury, and now they're worried about the player's status for the upcoming game. And it's totally unnecessary and unfounded. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be an injury. There's certainly a possibility you find out after practice. Oh, so-and-so, did after the workout yesterday, he was in the weight room and he sprained his ankle slipping on the floor. And it turns out it was an injury. That can happen. I'm not saying that it's impossible for a player who misses practice to, not be hurt. It is possible. But very often, the player's not hurt. I appreciate Armand Duda for you mentioning what you just did, because it allowed me the opportunity to once again fully explain how this stuff works. Oh my goodness. I don't get caught up in all the other crap. I just deal with facts. And that's the best way to be. Just deal with the facts. Like the old Dragnet series. I know very few of you who are on this show right now probably remember Dragnet with Jack Webb as the police officer. Just the facts. That's it. It's a great mantra. Just the facts. Freedom 341. Good evening, Paul. What's going on with Thomas Fedoni? He's the rookie tight end out of Nebraska. Do you see him getting more snaps if Bellinger can't go Giants? Yes, I would. Right now, you've got Bellinger with a sore neck, but he played with it last week. And you've got Chris Manhertz, who was ill and missed practice today. So, obviously, Fedoni would be the next guy up. He's played a little bit on special teams, had a really nice tackle against the Broncos last week. So, yes, I would think there would be a chance that you would see Fedoni getting some offensive snaps this week, should Manhertz and or Bellinger not be available or be limited for that matter. Isaac Moore, 1248. They're using the virtual first down marker now. I don't think no. I'm not going to go there. I think that's a fancy technology piece that they've introduced into the game for show. I don't think it really does a whole lot of, it doesn't give the referees much more of an advantage. Believe me. I understand. I know what they're telling you. And I understand that it looks good. And, it's new technology. The ball's an inch short. It's still an inch short. That's all I'm going to say. Ali Koenig says, how do you program AI? Lots of sensors and machine learning over time, not long, and telling the machine what exactly it is supposed to do. That's how. So, let's see. She also comes back and says, and I have to say, assume the correct guidance, assuming AI will likely do a much better job than the current officials. I hate to say it. I'm skeptical. But then again, if you know anything about me, You know, I think technology is moving way too fast. Isaac Moore, 1248. Ha ha ha. Ask Nvidia, a $5 trillion company. I am sorry. I have no idea what you're talking about. Armand Duda says, I was kind of hoping we would hire Salah as the defensive coordinator after he was fired from the Jets. MB Goblin, people saying Abdul Carter needs to finish, which I agree. That would be true. But I see him getting held so much during each game. MB Goblin, I referred to the comments I made earlier during this program, and I think you will understand where I lie on that particular issue. Armand Duda says we should get rid of the ping pong tables like Lamar Jackson did in Baltimore. Ha ha ha. For those of you who do not know, the Ravens are 2-5. Lamar Jackson is now back in the lineup after his injury, and he told the team, get the ping pong tables out of the locker room. He thinks they should be more focused on playing football. And so this is just some small item that he has decided to verbalize. I don't know. Honestly, the players have locker room time to go to lunch and eat in the lunchroom, sit at their lockers, watch some tape, which some guys do. They'll do it on a tablet, okay? Other guys will go inside to the whirlpool. Some guys will go use the time to get their equipment adjusted. And then some other guys will decide that they want to play billiards or they want to play ping pong. It's a little bit of downtime during the middle of the day. It's really their lunch hour when you get down to it. I don't know that there's anything wrong with it, to be honest with you. I think Lamar Jackson is saying it because he's got a reason to say it. He's entitled to it. And if the Ravens comply, well, that's fine. I don't think having a ping pong table out during lunch hour really equates to more wins or more losses. Now, if it was being utilized during other times outside of lunch hour where productive things could be taking place, then I would say it's best to get it out of there. As far as the Giants are concerned, I believe it is only utilized either during lunch hour or after guys have already been dismissed for the day from practice and all of their other responsibilities, as far as I know. But I can't say for sure because I'm not in the locker room following the end of the day responsibilities. MB Goblin says, also this 2-6 feels much better than the 6-2 from 2022. We have our quarterback. We have the makings of a scary front four. We have stars at wide receiver and running back, building blocks. Well, MB Goblin, let me just say this. Jaxson Dart's on the right track. Skattebo was on the right track until he got hurt. Malik Neighbors was on the right track until he got hurt. The front four has not nearly been as dominating as it should be. I am not going to run from the fact that I said before the season this was easily a top 10 defense and should be, if they reach their potential, a top 5 defense. I still believe that's what it should be. In terms of scoring output, the Giants are allowing 27 points a game. That is 26th in the National Football League. Yards per game, 382.5. 29th in the NFL. I mean, not acceptable. 30th in rushing yards allowed at nearly 150 a game. 24th in passing yards allowed at over 230 a game. Last in the NFL in rushing yardage per carry at over 5.5 yards a game. I'm sorry. This defense has dramatically underachieved. They have registered 19 sacks. That is tied for 13th in the league. That is not top 10. And as I said to you, the pressure score is 12th in the NFL. That is also not top 10. So, MB Goblin, I don't mean to burst your bubble. I do think it's a better roster. There's more talent on this roster than the 2022 team. I absolutely agree with that. But 2-6 does not feel good at all, especially when you've given away 3 games. Armand Duda, Carter has gotten a lot of pressures, just hasn't led to sacks. That is correct. Isaac Moore says, Isaac Moore 1248 comes back and says turbo time. I hope so. You guys know I'm a big fan of Dante Turbo Miller. I would really like to see him get some opportunities. Armand Duda says the loss of Micah McFadden was a major factor in our run defense being in the state it is. I do agree with you that the arrow was pointing up on Micah McFadden. He had shown improvement each season that he was in the NFL. Had over 100 tackles last year. He was definitely on the rise. And then he got hurt. MB Goblin, is McFadden expected back this season, or was his injury season ending? My understanding is they were hoping to get him back sometime in December. However, that still depends on the progress of his rehab as he goes through certain hurdles. And I suppose it might also have something to do with the Giants' status at that time. But as it stands now, I'm still thinking in my mind that there's a legitimate chance we'll see him before the end of the season. He is in his contract year. He is going to be a free agent after this year too, which is why so many players felt really bad for him getting injured. Not only did it hurt the team, but obviously hurt his opportunity to continue his development and upward trend that would have led to re-signing a deal. At this point, you just don't know exactly, what that situation is. Armand Duda says a lot of sacks were on Dart. Armand, I don't know when exactly. It's the 8:48. That was about a half hour ago you made that comment. I don't remember when I actually cataloged the sacks, but if you go back earlier into this program, you will hear where I have cataloged 9 sacks the Giants have given up out of their 25 that I have charted against their quarterbacks, not against what I consider to be a functional offensive line. Shanita Jackson, 1576. We're going to go, by the way, to 9:30. All right, just so you know, folks, we'll take you to the bottom of the hour with tonight's program. Good evening, Paul. I'm trying to hold on to hope that Dart's steady play, through Dart's steady play, but how do we survive a season with Neighbors and Scat out, Dex and defense underperforming, Dave's not out-coaching teams, etc.? Well, Shanita, you have to just take it one game at a time. I know that sounds so cliche, and it is, right? That is the number one cliche in sports. One game at a time. But that's the only thing you can do, because you never know week to week the mentality of your team. You'd like to make it consistent, but obviously it doesn't turn out that way very often, especially when a team is struggling. You would like to know that you're always going to have your players who you can count on, but we all know also when a team is in the dumps and having trouble winning, injuries tend to become a little bit more of a problem, and that's just human nature, right? It's a little tougher for these guys to push through when the team's not doing well. So you don't know who you can count on for how many snaps every week. You also don't know about your opponents. What is your opponent's mindset? What is their injury status? Each and every week, that can change. The San Francisco 49ers of this Sunday are nowhere near as talented a roster as the San Francisco 49ers were, several months ago. It's not the same team at all. It's a very beatable team. So don't think about the rest of the season. Just think about each individual game. Look, that's what I do. I've told you guys many times philosophically, I take a head coach's approach to every single week. And when I sit down and I study all the numbers and I study the tape and I look at the games from the past weekend, the opponent, I look at all their numbers and I watch. And I'm like, okay, what were these sacks? Let me go back and look at those sacks. Who was responsible? How did they get their sacks on defense? How did they give them up on offense? You know, what was working, what wasn't working? I'm looking at all this stuff like a coach would. I think it's the best way for me to bring enjoyment and analysis to you guys. I'm not interested in rumors. I'm not interested in secondhand opinions. I'm interested in digging into the tape myself. I've got NFL Plus Premium, which means I look at the coaches' films, and I'm not looking at any analytics. Okay, I'm not. I'm looking at pure, legitimate, raw stats, not analytical stats, raw stats. Looking at the tape, seeing what I see, and then I'm giving you guys what Bill Parcells always used to say: every game, every week, has at least one pathway to victory. And if you were the coach, what is that pathway to victory? What is it? And how many other pathways to victory might there be for your team in a specific week? And how many does the other team have? And how can you achieve that pathway to victory? That's how I break down a game. That's how I look at a game. And I try to bring that to you guys through this program and through the Big Blue Kickoff Live program during the day when I'm on Giants.com twice a week. I try to give you some analysis of stuff that you can look for that is probably on the head coach's sheet of pathways to victory. These are the things that you should be able to do, that you can do, and then what can the other team do? What should they be able to do? And how does this play into the potential game flow that specific weekend? So, Shanita, I have to be honest. I truly do look at every week individually. I really do. I don't really look ahead. And I'm looking right now at a very beatable San Francisco 49ers team. And I'm looking at the pathways to victory. And there are a few of them. Doesn't mean the Giants will win. But I certainly know what they've got to do to win this game. I absolutely know. I just don't know if they're going to do it. I'm not considering anything about the following week. Two giant goofballs. Smith-Marset is a quality receiver. Not sure. 0 catches in 15 games last year. 14 catches in 5th year. Here's what you don't know. I don't think you were at training camp every day this past summer. He played really well as a wide receiver. Surprised everybody and showed everybody during training camp that he had some potential at the wide receiver position. He was good. Now, they decided to go with Gunnar Olszewski taking that spot. And quite honestly, Olszewski had a terrific training camp at wide receiver. If any of you people were out there at training camp, you saw how good Olszewski was. He was ultra productive. To this point, the Giants have not seen fit to try to use him at wide receiver in a game. Again, there are some things that only the coaching staff has all of the information, and only the coaching staff is going to be able to calculate what it is that they want to do or they think they need to do. I simply will tell you that as someone who was at training camp every day, saw all those practices, yeah, Smith-Marset played well at wide receiver. He certainly looked capable. Giant goofballs, two Giants goofballs says Dexter Lawrence needs to be left to nose tackle and this DC needs to go because he couldn't scheme his way out of a paper bag. Armand Duda says missing training camp didn't help. Mark B, 8365, there's his first chime in. He's one of our regulars. And he says, Still can figure out what we have here. The Giants record 2-6, who they really are, or are they better than their record? If so, starts tacking some wins. James O'Keefe says, just the facts, ma'am. Exactly. Armand Duda, just the facts, if you don't mind. Armand Duda, you know what I'm saying. MB Goblin, just the facts. Dottino, that's me. Sean Jackson, 3203. And we're going to finish up here with just the last bit of your chats, and then we'll kick it out. Paul, before the season, if I told you Dart and Scat would play like potential offensive rookies of the year, the O-line would be the best unit, Burns double-digit sacks, would you think we're only 2-6? No, I would not. Jay Seward, 5325. Why do you think there was such a huge disconnect between former and current players? You would think they would want the knowledge. Well, I don't really know how to answer that question, because during the course of the offseason, head coach Brian Dable brought in a Giants legend. I don't know if it was every single practice during training camp and the spring camp. I don't think it was every one, but it was most of them. And he would bring back a Giants legend, somebody who had won a Super Bowl or had been like up on the Ring of Honor or had been an All-Pro. You know, these guys we're talking about some big time names. Phil Simms, Tiki Barber, names go on and on. I'm not even going to go through them all, but there were a bunch of them. And so those guys were brought back, and after practice was over, when they called up the team in a huddle at the end of practice, the Giants had the legend then address the team in the huddle before they kicked it off and went to the showers. So there's certainly been an effort there to make a connection between the legends and the current players. It seemed as though it was well received. I remember players talking about it. Tom Coughlin was one of the guys who spoke. It seemed like it was appreciated. It seemed like it was respected. I can't get inside the heads of all the players who were there at the time, but it certainly was an effort by this current coaching staff to utilize Giants legends. And, Antonio Pierce was another guy who was there at one point. I mean, there was a bunch of them. So I don't know really how to answer that question, because I see what the Giants did to effectively allow the legends to deliver their message to the players with the anticipation that it might mean something. I guess only an individual who listens can tell you if it sunk in or it didn't. Isaac Moore, 1248. Do you think the Giants will actually become sellers or trade players away? No, I do not. That is not the way of this organization. They do not prefer to do that. They'd rather play it out and try to win every game they can. When they traded Leonard Williams a few years ago to Seattle, it was because of they got a good offer. They went to Leonard and said, look, what do you think about this? What would you like to do? They knew he had never, he'd only had a chance to go to one playoff season, and he was looking forward to become another playoff season. And they knew he was going to be a free agent, a lot of money and so forth. Leonard, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay here and try to play it out, or do you want to go to a team that has a chance to be a playoff team? And Seattle was one such team. And he said, yeah, let me go back to the West Coast, because that's where he's from anyway. And so that was done out of consideration for the player. It wasn't like the Giants were shopping Leonard Williams, because they were not. As we later found out, the Buffalo Bills also made an offer for Leonard Williams. But again, remember what I just said a moment ago. Leonard Williams was real good with the deal because he wanted to go back to the West Coast. Buffalo is not on the West Coast. MB Goblin, I do agree that our defense has been greatly underwhelming and frustrating the games we lost. Very winnable in 2 of them. I'm just going to remain optimistic that the roster is on the right track. And as we wrap up here, Sean Jackson, 3203. Paulson's Dart potential looks like the Giants franchise quarterback. Does the clock start now or next season to get the most out of Dart's rookie contract? No, you have him for 4 years, plus you have him for the 5th-year option. Now, if he performs really, really well over the next couple of years, well, then it remains to be seen if they would then make some adjustments and maybe get an extension early. But you don't worry about that right now. Absolutely not. MB Goblin, I personally consider this year one for this regime now, but it matters more what John Mara thinks, and none of us will know that until the end of the year. That is correct. Armand Duda, finally, Mr. Mara will take more than just number of wins into consideration when he makes the decision, Mr. Tisch as well. And I think that is absolutely the smartest thing that anybody has said tonight. You're correct. Everything will be taken into consideration. The one-loss record is only going to be one component of it. Because, as I've said to you guys before, the one thing that I disagree with Bill Parcells on, when he said, you are what your record says you are. No. You are what your record says you are because that's how the league determines whether or not you get to play in the postseason. That's true. Not all 6-win teams are the same. Not all 10-win teams are the same. They're just not. There are some better 6-win teams. There are some worse 10-win teams. So everything does have to be taken into account. We'll be back with another edition of the Big Blue Breakdown. That is our 20-minute taped edition that comes your way Friday morning with a specific analysis of the 3 key matchups. And that's where you're really going to get to learn a lot about the Giants' pathways to victory against the San Francisco 49ers. That comes up on Friday morning right here on the Big Blue Breakdown on the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and Media Network. Then we'll be back again on Monday morning, right after the game. Well, not right after, but hours after the game, with our game balls and gases for the Giants for their offense, their defense, and their special teams. We'll analyze exactly what happened with each of those units. And then again, we'll be back next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time with our complete live program, much like what you just heard tonight, and talk for at least 60 minutes, maybe 90, taking your chats, your audio calls, and your video calls about New York Giants football. And next Wednesday, they'll be preparing for a road game the following weekend against the Chicago Bears. Until then, have a good night, everybody. I'm Paul Dottino, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for being with us.